So let's begin our morning together, our time together, the way that we always do. Let's say our focus statement together with all the V's: vim, vigor, velocity, voluptuousness, vivaciousness, and vitality. Here we go. We embolden people to live their highest potential through the transformative power of love. Yes, thank you. So here at Centers for Spiritual Living Worldwide, this year we have been focused on the theme of 2020 vision, 2020 spiritual vision. And aren't we really being called into that during this extraordinary time? Yes? Would you agree? Yeah. And here in the month of April, we are working with the theme of bright beginnings. And today we are working with the theme of broken open. And so we're going to explore this idea of broken open a little bit deeper, and we're going to use the Easter story to do some of that, and we're going to look at that from a metaphysical perspective as well. So if we think of broken open, if you think of an egg, first of all, like I'm sure maybe you boiled some eggs this week, maybe you've even dyed some eggs this week, right? And so how do you get to the inside? You have to break it open. But what we know is with an egg, especially if it was a fertilized egg, right, Marwan, Chester? If it's a fertilized egg and you break it open, what happens when you break something open from the outside, then what's inside has to die. Or what is inside dies, right? If an egg is broken from the outside, the embryo, the chick, is going to die before it's broken open, when it's broken open, right? However, when the chick matures inside the egg and is so compressed and so there and so bumping up against its edges that it has no choice but to peck its way out, when it breaks open from the inside out, then life comes forth. Yes? Right? So the chicken is growing, the baby chick is growing in there, and then it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows so big that the egg can no longer contain it, right? And in order for the chick to move into a greater expression of itself, it has to peck its way out and break open and break through that shell that has been containing it, that shell that has been protecting it perhaps, but it needs to move forth so that it can walk the earth and, take flight as chickens hop from place to place, maybe fly up into a tree, but get up under their roost. But, fortunately they don't fly overhead. Whoa, right? So, but right, that they come into this new expression, this new life. And so it's a bright beginning for the chicken, right? It's a bright beginning. It's a new awakening. It's awakening to a whole brand new experience. But what we know is that, as the song lyric says, and as the philosophers say, every beginning is some other beginning's end. Every beginning is some other beginning's end. And so if we look at that, what we see is that in order for there to be a new beginning, something has to end, something has to die, something has to pass out of existence so that something new can come forth, right? If you think of a seed, right, the seed itself has to die so that the plant can come forth, that the plant can emerge forth. The caterpillar has to die and turn into goo, right, for the butterfly to come forth. And so here we are in this remarkable, this extraordinary time together, where we are physically distancing but socially connecting, where we have taken a pause, where we have, as a society, as a global community, had the opportunity to take this deep pause. And what we know is that on the other side of this pause, there is something new waiting for us. Because there are some people that are like, oh, when things get back to normal, when things, when we are done with this and things get back to normal. But I tell you what, things aren't going to go back to normal. They're not. We have entered into a period of transition. We have entered into a period of change, and we have the opportunity now to turn within and go within and be together, but within for the greater good. And what we have this opportunity to do is to emerge from the other side transformed, transmuted, and something new is wanting to be birthed in this time frame. So if we look at the story of Easter, right, on Good Friday, as the story goes for our Christian sisters and brothers and siblings, Jesus was nailed to the cross. He was crucified. And he died on the cross. He was taken down and placed in a tomb, in a carved out rock tomb, carved out hollow, and a larger stone was placed in front of him. And that happened on a Friday because it was the day of preparation. So for the Jewish tradition, it was the day of preparation, which would therefore be a Friday. Then all day Saturday, the Sabbath, was quiet. It was very, very quiet and still. And then the following day, the first day of the week, according to the Jewish week, the first day of the week, Sunday, Mary Magdalene goes, still in the darkness of the morning, before the sun rises. She goes to the tomb where Jesus was laid, bringing ointments and perfumes to dress the body appropriately in the Jewish tradition. And when she gets there, when she arrives, the stone has been moved and Jesus is not there. The body is not there. And she cries out and she asks, "Where have they taken him? My Lord is not here. Where did he go? They have taken him somewhere." They being they, who they are. Right? And the angels ask her and said, "What are you looking for, woman? Whom do you seek?" And she says, "My God, my Lord." And they say, "You will not find him here. You will not find him here. For he is risen. He's resurrected." So let's look at that, shall we? So here we have the opportunity, when we place it into context of our lives, and even the context of their lives then, we have the context of putting it into our lives here, that they are, you'll be able to draw similarities between the story and what we are experiencing here. So on Good Friday, if you will, when Jesus was killed, there was a huge shift, a huge change in the ideas and the concepts and the beliefs of the people of the Jewish movement, of the Jesus movement, people that followed Jesus, right? They had this idea, they had this ideal, they had this faith, they had this trust that Jesus was the Messiah, Jesus was the Son of God, Jesus was one with the one, and therefore his life was eternal and everlasting. And yet, what they bore witness to was they saw Jesus, the man, die on the cross. And this really sent them reeling. It overturned their ideas, their belief systems, their way of being in the world. It overturned what they thought was actually true. And it called them into question. It called them to question their faith. It called them to question everything that they knew to be their truth, that they had been living. Absolutely called it into question. And they entered this deep period of mourning. Mourning not only for the man, but mourning for the systems, mourning for their beliefs, mourning for what they thought to be true. It was such a great loss. It wasn't just a loss of a human life. It was a loss of a whole way of thinking, a whole way of believing. And so there was a deep mourning. And at the same time, the people in Jerusalem, the Jews in Jerusalem, were very antagonistic toward this young movement, this Jesus movement, and their followers. And so what did these disciples and what did these followers do? They sheltered. They took comfort in their homes. They sheltered. They didn't go out for fear of their own lives, for fear of being persecuted, for fear of losing their own sense of being, their own sense of life itself. So they went into protective hiding, if you will. Observing the Sabbath, but went into a cocoon, if you will, went inward, right? So that they weren't outside, walking outside. So where are we right now? I ask you, where are we? What has died for us as a society? What is it that you are mourning in this moment, that you are grieving in this moment? Because yes, it is true that there are wonderful things happening and wonderful things unfolding. But what I want to make sure that we don't do is I want to make sure that we don't spiritually bypass what it is that we're feeling. What it is that we're experiencing in this time. Here in Riverside all week long, except for yesterday, we had a lot of rain and a lot of overcast. And once again today, it's kind of rainy and overcast. And I know for me that this is a time when it's rainy and overcast, I have a tendency to go within. And I have a tendency to listen, but I also have a tendency to experience sometimes some sadness around this feeling, right? So what I want to ask you this morning, and I invite you to go ahead and put it in the chat, when you think about this time that we are experiencing right now, and if there is some sadness that you're experiencing, there's some grief that you're experiencing, I want you to know that that is absolutely okay. That you are feeling feelings that you are meant to be feeling. If you weren't meant to be feeling them, you wouldn't be having them. So what is it in this moment when you contextualize and put into perspective? Perhaps it's the loss of a job. Perhaps it's the loss of a loved one. Perhaps it's the loss of freedom. Perhaps it's the loss of ideas and ideals. Perhaps your vision or your idea of the United States has shifted somehow, that it is not what you had expected it to be. Perhaps it is just a deep underlying grieving that's going on that you can't really explain. So I invite you to put it in the chat, whatever it is that you may be, and if you're not, that's fine, but whatever it is that you may be experiencing loss around, mourning, grieving around, I invite you to share it in the chat. And the reason why I invite you to share it in the chat is because when we share our sorrows, we flatten them, we broaden them, right? The more people holding the sorrows, then the sorrows dissipate. And when we share our joys, we amplify them, right? So what is it that you're mourning? Ed, can you share with us what some folks are mourning or grieving this morning?
Vicky, compassionate leadership in our country. Frank, loss of freedom.
Yes.
Diana, actual human contact with my peeps, hugs. Roxanne, old ways of being, old patterns, habits.
Absolutely, right? These things are things that we have the opportunity to grieve and we have the opportunity to mourn. So we have the opportunity to really be gentle with ourselves. I invite you to be present with what it is that you're feeling. Be present with that grief. Be present with your mourning and allow it to unfold naturally. Again, we don't wallow. We don't walk through the valley of the shadow of death or walk through the valley of the shadows, right? And build a condo, right? And build a town there. But we move through it. But the only way to move through, once again, is to walk through and to simply allow and to simply to express and feel what it is that you are feeling in this moment. And know that it is perfectly okay. Know that it is right and perfect for you. Know that it is part of the healing process. Know that with this is the opportunity for transformation. This is the opportunity for transmutation of what is. But first we need to honor those feelings. Were there anything else in the chat? Yes.
Loss of coming and going. Susie, removal of rights from the Constitution. Going when I get ready, going to work in gym. Jubal, our freedoms and our companionship. Allison, I have a deep sadness for the loss of life, particularly in New York and New Jersey, where I have many friends. I have no idea how they are. Earl, I'm grieving my 98-year-old mother-in-law who is in memory care, and coronavirus is all around, and I am sad.
Yes. Yes.
Renuka, traveling freely.
Yes. So breathe that in. Collectively as a community, feel that. Feel the pain. Feel the heartache. Breathe it in. And simply allow. Allow it to be. Allow it to be. And so when Mary goes to the tomb and she sees that the tomb is empty, that there's no one there, that the body of the beloved is not there, she cries out, wondering, where is it? Just the same way in the story that Jesus cries out on the cross, God, why have thee forsaken me? Right? She's wondering, where is God? Where is the divinity? Where is love? Where is that Christ consciousness? And the angels tell her that it's not to be found here in this tomb. It's not to be found in this empty place. That the consciousness, the Christ consciousness, the oneness is absolutely everywhere. But it is not solely located in a building, solely located in this place. And what we know in our faith tradition, in Centers for Spiritual Living, is what we know is that the Christ consciousness, the oneness, the Buddha consciousness, whatever you choose to call it, is absolutely everywhere present. Absolutely everywhere present. All of life, all of creation is the divine emanation and impartation of this one life. That right where we are, the power and the presence of life is. That we are one with that one, that it is the very who of who we are. And so we don't go seeking God out there. We don't go seeking God in the empty tomb. We don't go seeking God in the building that we inhabit. We know where God is. Where is God? God's right here. The divine is right here within us. And so it is not an awakening, or it's not a revelation, it's not a resurrection on the day of Easter. The resurrection happened on Holy Saturday. The resurrection happened in that quiet solitude, in that quiet, still Sabbath time, that time that we are in. That is where the resurrection happened. That is where the shift in consciousness happened. Easter Sunday morning, when she goes and then Jesus appears before her and says, "It is I," and she recognizes him. She recognizes Jesus in front of her, standing in front of her. She recognizes that. That is what the Easter is. It's not the resurrection itself is not Easter. It is the awakening to the revelation. It is the awakening to the resurrection. It is awakening to the newer, to the higher self, to the Christ consciousness. It's the awakening that is the Easter, not the resurrection. The resurrection happens in this time of quietude. The resurrection happens in this time of physical distancing. The resurrection happens in this time, in this tomb time. That's where the resurrection happens. And how does it happen? We don't know. That's the great mystery. It is the great mystery that is happening within each one of us, as each one of us. It is the great mystery that is unfolding in this time that we are spending in our homes, That is where the resurrection is happening. As William Bridges in his book Transitions calls it, it is the transition time. A change is an external factor that changes something externally. And the transition is our internal workings. It is our internal psychological shift. It is our internal spiritual shift to adapt to the new. And so yes, there is grieving in that moment, because what we are doing is we are in this time of transition. We are in this time of shifting, where the old has fallen away, but the new has not yet emerged. We are in our tomb time, if you will. And how did Jesus, the Christ consciousness, how did the body come out of the tomb? Right? Was it removed? Was it broken? Was the tomb broken into from outside? No. What the story says is that it was the Christ consciousness within that broke free from the limitations, broke free from the bonds, broke free and rolled the stone aside, moved the rock aside, to once again walk the earth, just the same way the chick does, that could not be contained. The chick could not be contained. The Christ consciousness, the divine within you, cannot be contained, but is seeking expression, seeking new life, seeking a greater, higher idea of itself, seeking a greater expression, walking this earth. And that is what we are doing both individually and collectively. Collectively, this is a time of it. People say it's not unprecedented, but truly it is unprecedented in that the entire globe, all of humanity has come to a standstill, has come to a stopping point. And so when people talk about it, like we're all being separate. No, we're not being separate. Yes, I'm living separately in my home. Ed and I are here in our home, and we're not going out and interacting with people. So yes, there's separation on that level, but what I invite you to understand is that there's a deeper idea here, and that is that there is actually unity, because the whole globe, all of humanity has come together as one family, as one unit, for the good of all of life, for the good of all of creation. And that, my friends, is unprecedented. And we don't know what it's going to look like when we get to the other side. You see? And that is where the promise of Easter comes in, where it's the promise of hope. We have the opportunity to turn within. We have the opportunity to grieve. We have the opportunity to mourn. And we have the opportunity to create something new together. Because truly we are coming together, moving consciousness forward. We are part of this evolutionary process. This involution and evolution, this idea of spirit moving forth in brand new ways, of our society, of our global society coming together and moving forth in brand new ways. And that's exciting and it's scary. And we don't know what it's going to look like. But what we do know is, what we do have the opportunity to do, is to turn within and listen to that still small voice. Pay attention to its guidance. What is the still small voice? What is the divine voice within you saying to you in this time? What is it calling you to be? What is it calling you to do in this time? I invite you to listen for that. Listen to what Spirit is saying. That is the promise, that is the hope of Easter, of moving from the old, transitioning during this time, and moving into and breaking open into the new. For truly then we will together collectively be broken open. So I invite you this day to honor that which you are grieving and mourning, and be gentle with yourself. And I invite you this day to open to the new possibility. Open out a way for that imprisoned splendor to escape. This is the beauty and the power of the story from long ago. And this is the beauty and the power of this moment in time in which we live. What a blessing this is. What a blessing all of this is. So if you can find even a moment of gratitude for what it is that you're experiencing, you will experience a shift. A shift. An awakening. A recognition of the divine within. Peace. I love you. So let's come together in consciousness, shall we? And so I breathe in and I feel the breath of life breathing me. Recognizing that it is this one life, this one breath that lives, moves, breathes, and has its being in, through, and as me, in, through, and as all of creation. It is the very who of who I am. In the beginning was the breath of life. It is eternal. It is ever present. It never ever dies because it is consciousness. It is the unformed. It is life itself. It is love, it is joy, it is peace, it is harmony, it is a divine right order. So I know that all unfolds under perfect grace, in divine ways. Because there is just this one life expressing itself in, through, and as all of creation, as each one of us here now. And so I speak a word here this day. I speak a word of love. I speak a word of possibility. I speak a word of wholeness for all those who may be experiencing some sort of dis-ease in their physical body temple, some sort of dis-ease in their mental capacities, some sort of dis-ease in society, some sort of dis-ease globally. I bring this disease and I bring it to the light. I bring it right in front of us, each one of us. Bring it right to the forefront and bring it forth in consciousness so that it may be released, so that we may just simply let it go and fall back into the nothingness from which it came. Because what I know is that right where love is, dis-ease cannot exist. Right where I know wholeness is, dis-ease cannot exist. Dis-ease of any nature. And so I simply let fall away all those fears, all those doubts, all those worries, all those what-ifs, all those what-wases. I let them fall away. I acknowledge the loss. I acknowledge the change and the transition that is occurring within me, that is occurring within my physical body temple, that is occurring within my psyche. It's occurring within my soul. I acknowledge the divine presence within me, calling me forth in a greater expression of my yet to be. And as it is calling me forth in my greatest expression, it's calling all of us forth in a greater expression. It's calling all of humanity forth in a greater expression of what is already. And so I relax into this knowing, having faith and trust in the divine order of life, in the harmony, in the love, in the peace, in the abundance, in the joy that is life, that is the divine. I know that everything is unfolding for the highest evolution of our individual and collective soul, for the unfolding of the evolution of spirit itself, knowing itself in a whole nother multitude of ways. And so I rest in this knowing. I trust in it. I know that that which has been, and I give thanks for what was. I give thanks for the gifts. I give thanks for the opportunities. I give thanks for life bringing me to this point, bringing humanity to this point. And I give thanks for what is yet to be. I give thanks for the beauty and the joy and the love of something new. A world that works for everyone in all of creation. Humanity awakening to its divinity, to its spiritual magnificence. For this is the opportunity that is being presented. And I say yes to it. I give thanks for all of it. And I release this word into the law, knowing it is done, knowing that it is so. I let it be. And together we affirm, and so it is. And so we light a candle to remember. Today I invite you to light a candle in your home and let it burn all day long to remember the divinity within each of you. The divinity within all of us, the divinity within creation. And so it is. I invite you to go to gallery view for a moment and see all the candles that have been lit. Beautiful. I love you.